The General Hospital spoilers for Friday, August 29th, suggest that Britt Westbourne's hunt will yield a surprise, while Drew Kane has his next traitor in mind. Willow Tate will also defend herself when she explains her predicament to Elizabeth Baldwin. So let's talk about what happens next on the ABC serial. Britt will be concerned about something while at the Five Poppies resort. Perhaps Britt will detect that Pascal is up to no good and pursue him as a result. If this is the case, Britt might be the one to uncover Vaughn and Jocelyn Jacks on Friday's episode. Jocelyn will beg for assistance when someone arrives in the doorway, giving Britt a chance to liberate the captives. However, Britt must exercise caution because her medication may be withheld if she is not on her best behavior. If Britt needs backup, she can call Jason Morgan on the burner phone he gave. If Trina Robinson walks in on all of the sizzling going on between Portia Robinson and Isaiah Gannon on GH, she might get a good look. Regardless, Trina will end up clashing with Portia, who will try to divert blame in this Drew disaster. Trina seemed to believe Portia should accept responsibility for her behavior, but she will undoubtedly remain furious with Drew. Trina would later seek aid from Kai Taylor, most likely in connection with her plan to take down Drew. Kai may be in a good position to help Trina because he still works for Drew, but can Trina persuade him to turn against his boss? Kai cares for Stella Henry, so the news that Drew started her legal troubles could be a big concern to him. Perhaps Kai will be next in line for traitor status. Stella will come open to Jordan Ashford about her darkest fear. Stella is aware that Curtis is upset and may go too far in making Drew a revenge target. That could be why Stella asks Jordan for help on Friday's GH episode. Stella will emphasize Jordan's closeness with Curtis and possibly argue that she is the only one who can prevent him from making matters worse. In the meantime, Curtis will issue another fatal warning in Drew's office. As the conflict escalates, Curtis will make it plain that Drew is doomed if he does not back down. Drew will next focus his attention to Carly Spencer, who may dismiss his assertions that Sonny Corinthos bribed Judge Heron. Drew may want Carly to persuade Michael Corinthos to accept his 50-50 custody claim, but Carly will refuse. Carly will make some alarming comments about Drew reaching the end of the line, implying that great trouble is on the way. Willow will tell Elizabeth about the bargain she committed to while she is in hospital. Unfortunately, Willow is willing to go back to Drew provided he honors his promise to bring her children to her. Liz will sound the alarm, concerned that Willow will become embroiled in more Drew drama, but Willow will stand firm in her plan. This could be Willow's greatest approach for seeing Wiley and Amelia Corinthos again, so she'll feel forced to seize the opportunity. Harrison Chase will become Willow's #1 defender if more complaints are filed. Chase will not let anyone disparage Willow because he believes she is a decent person and a terrific mother. A body will rise to the surface of the water near the docks. Danny Morgan will notice the body first and tell Rocco Falconeri, who is standing close to him. Although Drew could be a floater, someone else appears more plausible since that Jen Sidwell has hinted at going after Judge Heron. Will the judge be hushed and never uncover Sidwell's role in the bribery drama? The General Hospital recap is officially here for Thursday, August 28, 2025. Today's episode has Curtis Ashford confronting Drew Kane. Portia Robinson succumbs to her infatuation with Isaiah Gannon. Tracy Quartermaine and Martin Gray form an antagonistic alliance. At the police station, Brooke Lynn Quartermaine speaks with Dante Falconeri about Gio Palmieri. They recall Camilla Palmieri's funeral. BLQ is concerned about their son. Dante isn't sure how to help, but this is his chance to become a father. He takes off, presumably to find Gio. General Hospital recap Thursday, August 28. Curtis confronts Drew, Portia's passion, Tracy's enemy alliance. Alexis Davis's legal threat. Stella Henry remains in the police station. Trina Robinson tries to get in to visit Stella, but the investigators refuse. Sonny Corinthos is also present, followed by Alexis Davis. They refuse to let Alexis in either, so she reminds them of the law. She enters to see her customer. Stella informs Alexis that she was not arrested due to her conduct. She was handcuffed because of who she is. After Alexis leaves, she tells Sonny to stay out of this. She'll make sure Drew pays. Trina appears and announces that she will seek answers. Portia Robinson's jealous ranting over with Portia. She goes on a jealous rant with Curtis about Jordan Ashford. Curtis reminds her that his mother has been detained. Portia does not care and makes everything about herself. They argue and fight. First, about Jordan and Stella, and then about Trina's paternity. Curtis walks out. Their marriage is over. General Hospital recap Thursday, August 28th. Curtis confronts Drew, Portia's passion, Tracy's enemy alliance. Meanwhile, Jordan receives an update on Stella. She bumps into Gannon, who warns her to give Curtis some room. He's attempting to aid Portia. That's nice. Gannon confronts her about her feelings toward Curtis. The former commissioner insisted that no lines had been crossed. Gannon can see her feelings for Curtis, even if she denies them. When Curtis shows up, Gannon takes off. Drew started the probe into Stella, she claims. Meanwhile, Gannon enters Portia's office, and the two make out frantically. They eventually develop an office obsession. Read this. General Hospital spoilers. Jack is about to propose to Carly while Joss goes missing. Martin seeks Tracy's assistance. She laughs and mocks him until he says it's about Stella. Drew initiated the probe, he claims. Tracy believes Martin is a clown, but she adores Stella. She will assist. Brooklyn vents about Gio after Martin has left. Dante went searching for their son. Meanwhile, Dante sees Gio in the chapel. Gio admits he simply feels lost. Dante discusses Joe's closeness with his mother. The detective also apologizes for the way he treated Gio previously. General Hospital recap Thursday, August 28th. Curtis confronts Drew, Portia's passion, and Tracy's enemy alliance. Marco Rios pays a visit to Jen Sidwell. He made a move against Sonny. The lawyer informed Drew that the judge had been bribed. Sidwell freaks out and begins yelling that everything was part of the plan until he ruined it. Sidwell has to see the judge before Sonny does. Drew orders Michael Corinthos to apologize to Willow Tate and bring the children to see her. That is the agreement on joint custody. If Michael does not agree, there will be repercussions. Michael urges Drew to get lost. Drew phones Willow and tells her he's found a method to get the kids back. Suddenly, Curtis appears and declares, "This crusade must end or I will end you." Share your ideas in the comments area below. Keep watching ABC soap operas to find out what happens next. The dull, gray shroud of dawn hung over Port Charles's harbor, where the air carried the faint scent of salt and the distant hum of early morning dockworkers. Britt Westbourne stood at the pier's edge, her breath apparent in the frigid air, her eyes exploring the horizon for answers. Her search had led her here, fueled by a nagging suspicion that something was horribly wrong. She had not expected to be back in this town, where every corner seemed to whisper memories of grief and treachery. But the pull of unsolved questions, mysteries lurking under the surface, was too strong to resist. The news about Judge Eva Heron's participation in a murky custody case had reached her through hushed conversations and cryptic communications, and Britt, never one to avoid the truth, had followed the trail. The docks were quiet except for the soft lapping of waves against the pilings. Britt's boots tapped lightly against the aged wood as she moved, her thoughts racing. She had heard rumors of corruption, bribes, and backroom deals with the custody dispute over Wiley and Amelia Corinthos. Judge Heron, known for her strict decisions and tough personality, was at the center of everything. Britt's study had begun as a favor for a friend, a means to look into the allegations surrounding Jen Sidwell, a man whose name seemed to cast a pall over Port Charles. But, standing here, she felt the weight of something much darker. The morning mist broke, and she saw it. A form bobbing in the sea just beyond the pier's edge. Her heart stutters. She squinted and stepped closer, her pulse accelerating as the figure became clear. A body, tangled in a net, pale and dead. It floats like a dreadful phantom against the dark ocean. Britt's breath seized in her throat, and a cold fear settled into her bones. She groped for her phone, her fingers trembling as she contacted Jason Morgan, the only person she felt she could trust in this situation. "Jason, it's me," she said softly, her voice tense. "I'm at the pier. There's a body in the water," he said calmly and urgently. "Stay there. Do not touch anything. I'm on my way." Britt waited, her gaze fixated on the figure in the water. The body was too far away to see details, but the sinking feeling in her gut told her it wasn't an accident. As the minutes passed, the sound of footfall neared, and she turned to see Jason, his face set in that old stern mask. He took one glance at the situation and nodded, then pulled out his phone to make a quiet call to the Port Charles Police Department. It didn't take long for the authorities to arrive, their lights visible through the fog. Britt's worst suspicions were verified when the body was taken from the sea and put out on the dock. It was Judge Eva Heron. Her face, previously sharp and authoritative, was now motionless, her eyes looking blankly into the sky. The cops whispered amongst themselves, their voices low, but Britt heard fragments, drowning potential foul play, no immediate evidence of struggle. Her thoughts raced, trying to piece together the bits of what she understood. Heron had presided over the Corinthos custody case, a conflict that had swept through the town's elite like wildfire. Sonny Corinthos, Michael, Willow, and Drew Kane were all involved, each with their own agenda and secrets. And then there was Sidwell, the enigmatic individual whose name kept coming up in her investigations. Britt's hunt had started weeks before, prompted by a chance encounter with Lucy Coe at the Metro Court. Lucy, ever the gossip, had revealed that Sidwell was pulling strings behind the scenes to manipulate deception, and possibly the courts. Britt, no stranger to Port Charles's underbelly, had begun digging. She'd followed leads to the Five Poppies Resort, where she overheard Pascal, a man associated with Sidwell, saying something vague about silencing someone. She hadn't connected it to Heron at the time, but as she stood over the judge's body, the pieces began to fall into place. Jason put a hand on her shoulder, bringing her back from her thoughts. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice low. She nodded, but her gut churned. "This is bigger than I expected, Jason." Heron played a crucial role in the custody fight. If Sidwell got to her, he didn't need her to finish. "We need to know who saw her last, and why she ended up here." The cops had already cordoned off the area, but Britt's thoughts were elsewhere. She recalled Danny Morgan and Rocco Falconeri, the two lads who had initially discovered the body, their youthful faces blanched with terror as they dashed to warn someone. She remembered Drew, who had used information about Heron's suspected payment to put pressure on Michael. And she remembered Sonny, who had claimed he hadn't bribed the judge, even though his word was usually ambiguous in this town. While the cops worked, Britt snuck away, determined to find Pascal. She'd seen him at the resort, and he knew what had happened to Heron. The Five Poppies Resort was a huge compound, a playground for the elite, complete with groomed gardens and discreet bungalows. It was also a location where secrets were swapped as freely as money. Britt went around the foyer, looking for Pascal's characteristic silver hair and the sharp, calculating gaze she had grown to recognize. She discovered him in a quiet corner of the bar, nursing a drink and conversing in low tones with a woman she didn't recognize. Britt approached quietly until she could hear his voice. "It's done," he said. "She won't be a problem anymore." Her blood cooled. She stepped forward, her voice piercing the air. "Who will not cause an issue, Pascal?" He froze, his gaze tightening as he turned to face her. The woman next him moved aside, vanishing into the crowd. "Dr. Westbourne," he murmured, his voice silky but menacing. "What brought you here?" "I found Judge Heron," she answered, her voice firm despite the chills running up her spine. "In the water. Dead. Could you explain?" Pascal's countenance remained unchanged, but his eyes twitched with surprise or calculation. "A tragedy," he remarked, swirling his beverage. "But I'm afraid I don't know anything about it." Britt refused. She leaned in, her voice low. "I understand you're working with Sidwell. I know about the bribe. And I know you were at the resort when Jocelyn and Vaughn were abducted. Start talking, or I'll go to the police with everything I have." Pascal remained silent for a moment, his stare fixed on hers. Then he smiled coldly like a predator. "You are playing a risky game, Doctor. Be careful not to end up like the judge." The warning remained in the air, but Britt did not flinch. She'd faced worse than Pascal in her time, and she wasn't about to give up now. She turned and departed, her thoughts already rushing to the next step. She needed to locate Jocelyn and Vaughn, who were still missing, and she needed to alert Sonny and Michael of Sidwell's reach. If Heron's death was linked to the custody case, nobody was safe. Back in Port Charles, news of Heron's death traveled quickly. Willow Tate was reeling at the hospital, the memory of her discussion with Elizabeth Baldwin still fresh. She told Elizabeth about her arrangement with Drew, her desperate attempt to see her children again by siding with him. Willow had been warned about the risk, but she felt trapped between her feelings for Wiley and Amelia, and the havoc caused by Drew's plots. Now that Heron had died, the stakes were considerably higher. If the judge had been silenced, what would prevent Sidwell or Drew from pursuing anyone else who stood in their way? At the Corinthos compound, Sonny was pacing, his mind racing with rage and calculation. Michael had informed him about Drew's blackmail effort, and while Sonny denied bribing Heron, he was not naive. He was aware of Sidwell's reputation and knew he played dirty. The docks, his docks, were supposed to be his turf, but Heron's body had appeared there, a message if he had ever seen one. He summoned his soldiers, yelling orders to increase security and discover who had been near the pier that night. Meanwhile, Carly Spencer was dealing with her own issues. Drew had approached her, peddling tales of Sonny's corruption, but she had turned him down. Her devotion to Sonny was unwavering, even if their relationship was filled with stress. But Drew's remarks lingered, and now that Heron had died, she couldn't help but wonder whether his charges were true. She visited with Michael, her voice filled with concern. If Sonny did not bribe Heron, who did? And why has she died? Michael shook his head, his jaw tightened. Drew is playing a game, Mom. He is using this to get to me and Willow. Carly's brows widened as she considered the possibility that Sidwell was responsible. Then we need to take him down before he takes us all down. As the day progressed, Britt couldn't stay away from the docks. The police had left, but the air remained thick with the weight of what had occurred. She stood where the body had been taken from the sea, her thoughts replaying Pascal's remarks. She knew she was getting close to the truth, but she also knew the consequences of probing too far. Port Charles was a town based on secrets, some of which were worth killing for. Jason found her there, his presence a calming anchor. You won't let this go, are you? He said it more as a statement than a question. She shook her head, her gaze focused on the lake. I cannot. Not now. Not after seeing her. He nodded, understanding as only he could. Then we do it jointly. But you need to be prepared, Britt. Whoever did this isn't going to stop with one body. She held his eyes, her resolve stiffening. I'm ready. The sun was rising higher now, casting long shadows on the pier. Sidwell was somewhere in Port Charles, watching and waiting as his plans unfolded in the darkness. Britt, with Jason by her side, was determined to bring them to light, at any cost. Curtis had reached his limit, as evidenced by the way he stormed into Drew's office, his jaw hard and his eyes filled with a passion Drew hadn't seen in years. Drew tried to remain calm, leaning back in his chair, pretending he wasn't spooked by Curtis' unexpected entrance. But Curtis wasn't there to play games. Weeks of tension had built between them, driven by secrets, half-truths and decisions that had reverberated across their lives, and Curtis was finally ready to confront Drew. The charges came quickly and sharply, with each remark falling like a strike. Curtis demanded to know why Drew believed he had the authority to control situations behind his back, why he was interfering with things that did not belong to him. Drew, never one to back down from a confrontation, responded with his own list of grievances, citing Curtis' mistakes that affected everyone around them, and accusing him of acting like a martyr while leaving others to clean up his mess. The fight escalated, with the two men verbally circling each other like boxers in a ring, neither wanting to give an inch. Drew attempted to defend his recent actions, claiming that he was protecting those he cared about and correcting mistakes before they spiraled out of control. But Curtis didn't buy it. He reminded Drew of all the times his so-called protection had failed and caused pandemonium. The conflict between them was more than simply this recent betrayal. It was entrenched in years of convoluted history, with allegiance tested and broken more times than either of them could count. Despite his rage, Curtis' voice contained disappointment. Meanwhile, across town, Portia was dealing with her own storm of emotions, which were just as severe as Curtis and Drew's. Her feelings for Curtis had never wavered, even during the darkest times of their relationship, but the ongoing lies and miscommunications had worn her down. She wanted to think that she and Curtis could restore their relationship, that they could rediscover the love that had bonded them together, but every time she reached out, something seemed to tear them apart. Still, Portia wasn't ready to give up, especially when her heart told her there was still something worth fighting for. She had spent far too many hours lying awake, rehashing every disagreement, silence, and wasted chance, and she was now resolved to take control of her story. Her devotion was not only for Curtis, it was also for her family, the future she wished to create, and the girl she wished to safeguard from further pain and instability. She was aware that she had made mistakes, but she also understood that she was not alone. She desired honesty from Curtis, Drew, and everyone, but in Port Charles, honesty was a scarce commodity, and love was never easy. Tracy had her own plans back at the Quartermain house, and while they were not motivated by passion, they were powered by something equally potent: power. Tracy had always been a superb strategist, able to see 3 moves ahead while everyone else was still figuring out the game's rules. This time, however, she was confronted with a problem she couldn't fight alone, which required her to do something unusual: establish an alliance with an old enemy. Tracy didn't take this decision lightly, but she felt the stakes were too high to allow pride get in the way. Tracy's new partner was not someone she trusted, not even close, but she had learned over the years that occasionally your adversary can become your greatest advantage. The negotiations were difficult, with disguised threats and backhanded compliments, but they eventually reached an agreement, one intended to undermine a rival who had been gaining too much progress for Tracy's comfort. She didn't tell anyone, not even her family, because the fewer people knew, the less likely it was that someone would ruin it. Tracy had no idea how far-reaching the implications of her alliance would be. In her efforts to defend her family's history, she may have unleashed a fresh wave of instability on Port Charles, drawing Drew, Curtis, Portia, and everyone else into its path. Curtis, still angry after his argument with Drew, couldn't escape the idea that he was missing something, that there was a broader game going on around him, and he wasn't seeing everything. Every time he felt he had the situation under control, another secret was revealed, and another twist knocked him off balance. It was no longer just about Drew. It was about trust, survival, and defending those who were most important to him. Drew, on the other hand, was facing his own issues. He wanted to believe that he was doing the right thing, that his actions were for the greater good, but he knew that some of them were motivated by fear and ego as much as love and loyalty. Facing Curtis forced Drew to confront those truths, but he wasn't ready to give up. He wasn't ready to give up fighting, not for his power, not for his relationships, and definitely not for his future. Portia, torn between her feelings for Curtis and her growing aggravation with the never-ending loop of lies and betrayals, began to question if she should pick herself for once. She wanted to believe in their love, but she couldn't keep giving up her own pleasure for someone else's mistakes. And yet, every time she considered leaving, she remembered the man she had fallen in love with, the man she believed was still there beneath all the grief and rage. Tracy watched from the sidelines as the pieces fell into place, calculating her next move. Her alliance was just the start, and if everything went as planned, she'd come out on top. But in Port Charles, plans rarely stay on track for long, and Tracy's adversaries were already gathering their troops, ready to strike when she least expected it. Curtis and Drew's tension remained unrelenting, and Portia's passion threatened to erupt into something neither of them could contain. Secrets were stacking up, alliances were shifting, and someone was twisting strings they couldn't see. What began as a fight between 2 men was about to set off a chain reaction that would shake the foundations of Port Charles, leaving everyone to wonder who they could trust, who they should fear, and how far they were willing to go to protect those they loved.